Hi there, Kendra Tolbert here. I'm a registered dietitian and yoga teacher, and I specialize in women's health and fertility. And today's interview is an interview with Zariel Grullón. She is a dietitian, a nutrition communicator, a content creator, and just a really fabulous human. I absolutely adore her, and I'm certain that you will as well after you watch this interview if you're not already familiar with her work. In this video, we chatted about nutrition for endometriosis, as well as her experience with endometriosis as someone who has endometriosis. So she brings together her nutrition expertise with her lived experience in a way that I think is incredibly valuable and impactful. Let's get into this interview with Zariel Grullón. Hi, Zariel. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, so I know this is going to be a very special interview.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and I love everything that you do. So this is really exciting for me. It's like a celebrity that I'm
Oh,
talking to.
so far from, just ask my husband. So I would love it if you would introduce yourself and share a bit about who you are and what you do, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm Zariel. I'm a registered dietitian. I am from the East Coast originally, and now I'm in Texas. So lots of changes in everything that I've been doing. Um, I grew up in a Dominican household and I have endometriosis, and that kind of runs in the family. So that has kind of also made its way into my work. And I have lots of other things, but I'm not gonna bore you with all my details.
There's nothing boring about you. I love your videos on your channel, and I'm like, this lady sews and she travels and she's got a cute dog with a fantastic little name. And the name doesn't match the body, by the way, for the dog, but I love that.
I think her name was Luna, and then when they like get in the shelter, they always change the name. So I think they just changed it to Tuna, and then we just didn't change it either.
That's how it worked. Because I was always like, I need to know the story behind tuna. Okay, this makes sense now. So, back on topic. So, you mentioned that you have endometriosis, which is why one of the many reasons you're the perfect person to talk to about this nutrition and endometriosis and the ways that nutrition influences endometriosis. But before we get there, can you just tell us what it is so we have a clear definition?
Yes. So endometriosis is basically a whole body disease, is what they're starting to find out now. But what we typically understand about endometriosis is that the endometrial lining, which is in all of us in our uterus, for folks that have endometriosis, that grows outside of the uterus and it can grow all over the body, is also a fun fact that they're finding out. They're finding like endometrial tissue in people's brains, chest, legs. So it can really travel outside of the uterus, which makes it difficult for diagnosing. But it is a definitely like an inflammatory disease. Some, depending on who you're talking to, they'll give it different names, like an autoimmune condition, an estrogen dominant condition. What I like to picture it as myself is like there's things out of balance when it comes to the womb space. And I'm personally trying to like find the balance, knowing that in some cases we may never find balance or we do. And it's kind of just this little game that we play or that I play.
Can you share a bit more about your journey? I know that diagnosis or receiving a diagnosis can be incredibly difficult. So, what was that like for you?
Yeah, because most of my pain is was located in my abdomen. No one would listen to me when they were like, I got doctors to listen to me. I want to take that back. Doctors listened to me, but it was never tied to my menstruation cycle or anything related to my like reproductive organs because it was located in my abdomen. So for a long time, a lot of my doctors were going down the like IBS route. I was even given like a Crohn's diagnosis at one point, and that wasn't really necessarily true. And it wasn't until I met this one doctor in New Rochelle that, based on everything that I was telling her, she was like, yeah, it sounds like endometriosis. So she sent me to a specialist. where he was diagnosing my endometriomas, which are these cysts that fill with blood that can be found on your ovaries. And because of my familial history and everything that I was presenting with, they gave me that diagnosis. But to get an official diagnosis, the gold standard is a laparoscopy, and that's where they take a little camera and they go in through your abdomen to see. I have never done that. So some people will say I'm not diagnosed because I haven't done that, but we know what it is. And recently, actually, a fun fact, they found a blood test. They're working on a blood test in Australia that can diagnose endometriosis with just our blood. And they're hoping to bring that stateside by 2026. So that's like a really big progress in that kind of diagnosing that condition a little faster for people because it can take years. Like if we're thinking back to my first cycle, it was super painful. Um, my family used to fly in medication from DR to take because it was so painful. And then the pain kind of stopped, but then it came back up for some reason. And that's where kind of got me back into trying to find out what was wrong. And that took many years, but the real time of trying to get diagnosis, it was maybe like 4 or 5 years of trying to find answers until I finally did get an answer.
Well, I'm happy that you received an answer, and I'm happy that there's going to be this new, hopefully, lab test available that'll just make it easier for people and hopefully shorten that time because it's important to know exactly what's going on. There's nothing worse than feeling uncertain about what's happening in your
Mhm.
body. So, whew, other than pain, were you experiencing any other symptoms? Are there any other symptoms that are common with endometriosis?
Pain is one of the bigger ones, and it can be confused with just like period pain, which can also delay diagnosis. But some other kind of things that I know are present are like endo bloat, and that's when your belly is like super bloated, painful to touch, and not necessarily related to anything to your diet. That's a common thing that can be present. Some other things that are coming to mind too is oop, I just lost it. Oh, our cycle, like the length of our cycle. Sometimes if it's like really short or really long, that can be a kind of clue in to see what's going on. And if we ever do get an ultrasound, a vaginal ultrasound by our GYN, cysts, like the endometriomas that I mentioned earlier, that can also be something to think about because, yes, people with wombs can have cysts, but there's different kinds of cysts, and the endometrioma specifically are called chocolate cysts, and they are filled with blood essentially. And it's blood that, for some reason, is not getting moved around how it's supposed to, so it just like gets stuck on your ovary. And oops, and as those grow, they can become a little bit more dangerous, and that can cause some pain that some people can then attribute to like, oh, my ovary pain, like ovulation pain, but it could be like the ovary hurting because of the cyst.
Yeah.
Those are like the bigger uh symptoms. And I also want to say you could have no symptoms. And
Yeah.
that's concerning too.
That definitely seems to be a common one. I've had people who I've worked with one on one who were trying to conceive, ended up having difficulty trying to conceive. And then it was suggested that they have endometriosis, but they were like, I don't have any of the symptoms. How could that be the case? And so they find out while they're trying to conceive that that could be a
Hmm.
concern that they need to address. So, so it could be you have symptoms. It could be you don't have symptoms. Oh, bodies. I love bodies, but they do some interesting things sometimes. Now, you mentioned bloating not related to food. So we'll hang out in the food world for a while. We're both in that world. So,
Hmm.
can you speak to whether or not there are certain foods or eating patterns that cause endometriosis?
I wouldn't say that it causes it, but if we're starting to like look at our dietary patterns, we might be able to see some clues as to things that could make it a little bit more uncomfortable for you or whatever the case is for that specific person. But I wouldn't feel comfortable saying like food causes it because we also just don't know what causes it. It's the answer.
Fair.
But, family history, if they're starting to put it into like an autoimmune category, there's that estrogen dominant. So there's like little different things. Women's bodies. But you know, food can definitely play a role in exacerbating your symptoms and also helping to support like mitigating your symptoms.
That's good to know. So there's definitely no like you ate this and you made it happen. I think that's always important for people to know with any sort of chronic condition. And I will always find an excuse to have someone else back me up on that. So thank you for falling into the trap that I set.
Okay, good.
Um, now, are there any foods or eating patterns that are associated with a decreased risk of developing it?
Developing it, I want to say yes and no because we can't like we don't know. We don't know why we're developing it in the first place. But if we are thinking of it like getting progressed, you can kind of think about it. We want to allow the body to what I like to explain to my clients is what I want to say is like if there is an estrogen dominance, let's say, what we want to do is allow the body to get rid of that extra estrogen. Extra estrogen. And by one of the things we can do is like making sure we're getting ample fiber because that makes it easy for the body to kind of like clean up things. And so if we're thinking about our diet and we're not having enough fiber, could that develop the condition or make it worse? Maybe, but it's all relative to that person um, because it is not a diet specific condition. It's it's very dependent on you as a person and like what your body is telling you because you could eat all certain type of way and you still have all the pain or you could do it and feel nothing and think it's because you're doing that but it just could be like your body's just doing nothing and the disease inside could be taking over with no pain.
You touched on something 2 times that I feel is really important. You've made it clear that it's about the individual, that it's not this like one size fits all, everyone needs to follow this diet. You've said individual a few times. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how someone might go about figuring out what either exacerbates or improves their symptoms without getting stuck in the idea that they need to follow like the endometriosis diet, which doesn't really exist, even if you might find an endometriosis diet online.
Yeah, I think that is a ever evolving work, right? To get to understand your body. And if you're already working in the space of healing your relationship with food, it'll come a little bit easier for you. But I think it's really important to take things as information, not as rules that you have to follow. So, for example, in the beginning, when all of this was happening for me, I noticed that when I drank caffeine and I was on my cycle, I would get a flare up. That relationship just kept popping up and I was like, "You know what? I'm just going to not test it anymore and take it as is." And it's been a long time, so I don't even know if it's still there, but I've learned that during that moment where my body's doing so much to bleed, adding something that's going to like jumpstart it is not what my body's asking for. So learning to transition to things that are more calming to the body, like teas and warm beverages during that cycle, has been helpful for me. And also helping me realize like, do I really even need a cold coffee right now? Like, I probably don't. So allowing those moments where you're having a symptom to be something to bring in some curiosity and testing it as safe as you can because a flare up is not fun, right? You don't want to like test a flare up because then you'll be sick and then you can't do anything, depending on the severity of it for you. But there's ways that your body's communicating to you all day long, especially with a condition like this, that if we're able to tune in, we're going to get a little bit more answers than if we're just following what we're seeing online that's prescriptive if not taking you into account.
I loved every bit of that. I heard a lot of encouragement to be curious, to experiment in a way that's gentle and compassionate. And I heard a need to pay attention to your body over the external voices. And I
Mhm.
think that's always a good idea for anyone to do in any situation. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Now, I didn't think we would go here. So if you're like, ooh, Kendra, I don't know if I want to. You mentioned hot versus cold. And to me, my little like, ooh, I love traditional Chinese medicine brain kind of went off there. And so is there anything, at least in that particular way of thinking about it, kind of a more, I would call it, I don't want to call it holistic. I'm not even sure what to call it. We'll call
Like
it
a
like
bigger
traditional
picture.
medicine. Yes,
Nutrition.
way of looking at things. Is there anything to this idea of like stagnation and cold versus warmth and increasing circulation? And if so, I want to hear all about it.
Yeah. So when I first was getting my diagnosis and the pain was really bad, I was referred to an acupuncturist, Joe, the best ever. And he described the condition as stagnation of blood in the uterus. Especially if we're thinking of those endometriomas, we can physically see that. But a condition like endometriosis is not, for whatever reason, there's not circulation going on. And so anything that we can do to promote circulation is going to be key, whether that's acupuncture, which I recommend to anybody for anything almost. Acupuncture, he also would give me like exercises to promote like blood flow, your yoga class, like videos, right? And just anything. And then when we're thinking about food, we want to have warming foods or warming things, is how he explained it to me in that space. So, yeah, cold beverages doesn't 100% make sense. And then, like, certain foods to kind of include if we're thinking, I remember orange foods and then like ginger to warm up that space. So from time to time, I'll go through like an orange phase, but I don't really like orange things like that. So it's not present in my diet often. But sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, like I should probably get some like orange going on for us. But yes, to that point of traditional Chinese medicine and also like Afro Caribbean wellness, we have that same thing. Like growing up, we were taught to put socks on, not walk barefoot. We couldn't like open the fridge when we were on our period so that the cold air wouldn't hit us. Um, we couldn't like drink lemonade, like acidic things during our cycle either. For whatever reason, I'm thinking like the taxing, whatever. I don't haven't found the thread for that one yet, but there is wisdom that has been passed down that kind of speaks to the warming of the body. And these ice beverages kind of like don't allow for blood to flow the way it should when you're already having a condition that doesn't allow for blood flow at baseline.
Yeah. Ooh, such good stuff. I have so much respect for traditional wisdom and traditional medicine because it really has stood the test of time in so many ways. And I think also just having an opportunity to connect to your culture in the ways
Mhm.
that you're caring for yourself, at the very least, feels very comforting and nourishing, but it's also, I have seen to be incredibly effective and impactful. So nice stuff. Now,
I
over
love it
on your,
too.
oh, good. Over on your channel, you talk about a lot of different things, which I think is tons of fun. And I'll probably be moving into that realm myself because I'm like, she's having
Yay!
fun over there. I'm wondering if we could maybe talk about one topic that you do touch on from time to time, and that's preconception preparation. If you don't want to, I totally respect it, but I'd love to hear.
I made videos about it, so I think
Sure.
I think it's fair game. And you're also see I saw yours. You're popping some up too. Some
Yeah.
preconception. Yeah, I started to do that because I didn't see enough of that essentially, that conversation. Definitely there's so much conversation of like prep right when you're going to start, but all of the steps before, which is like a year or more, if you're really taking it seriously, is important. And I wanted to document some of that for myself and also to share with other people because there's so much that I feel like we can do to, and I'm having this shift very intentionally right now because of some things that are going on. And this is a time where you can really take care of yourself for yourself. Like, yes, the goal is to have a baby if and when that happens. But really, this is like an opportunity for you to pour into yourself as much as you can and cultivating what me and my friends say is like cultivating a womb that is safe enough for a baby to want to come in there, right? And if there's cues that the womb is not the time right now, like that's information for you to take and figure out what you need to take care of yourself. And I don't want to minimize it in a sense. Like I know people struggle with fertility and all of that. We have not even started that route yet. So I don't even know anything, right? I don't want to ever put myself as an expert in something that I haven't experienced, but there is always like the body communicating something. And if we're able to take care of all those bases and make the womb a happy womb, theoretically, it could be easier to conceive. We'll see when that happens. But in the meantime, yeah, taking care of myself. Um, Recently, I started pelvic floor therapy through Origin Way. It's like virtual telehealth. And that's been fun, giving me like exercises specifically targeted to the pelvic floor, which I didn't know was such a big deal, right? I feel like we hear about it a little bit. We're getting definitely more communication about it now. I feel our generation's more open talking about certain things, but definitely growing up, that was not anything that was discussed. And definitely the messaging around pelvic floor therapy too is like doing it after you're
Mhm.
pregnant or during pregnancy. And I was like, well, let's just see if I could do it before. And it's been fun learning how to engage all those muscles and everything. But yes, there's lots of different things. You can ask me whatever questions you have about what specific things I'm doing, but there's lots of little ways that I'm taking care of myself and then allowing that to be part of my overall way of living, you could say.
I mean, you're definitely preparing on so many different levels. One of the things that I found really refreshing was how you spoke to kind of a spiritual preparation. So, is there anything specifically there that you'd like to share?
Yeah, lots of things. I pulled cards before I talk today to see like what's going on. One thing is my friend does alignment readings and she just does these readings to kind of help you figure out what's blocked or things like that. And in one of those sessions that she did for me like 2022 or 2023, she was like, "Oh, you can meditate with your baby." And I was like, "Now, girl, what are you talking about?" And she was like, "No, I know." And I'm like, "Okay, okay. I trust you and I'm going to look into it." And I did look into it. And that's a really fun way to remind ourselves that we're souls and we have like all of this soul family up there, but in there is also the baby that is choosing you and can help you navigate what it is that you need to do so they can come down. Um, we have one that's very uh in one meditation he or she came up to me as like a Tasmanian devil, like just running around. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And you just have a lot of energy. So that's what we always pick on, me and my husband, when we're meditating. But in there, something that they said that they always say is to have fun. And I think so much of this journey of preparing for conception can get very like rigid and just rule following and forgetting what the whole point is. So whenever I do tend to get type A about the way I'm taking care of myself, that will come out very clearly. And it's a good reminder for me to like, yeah, like just relax. Like they're not gonna come here till you're having fun anyway, so why are you gonna delay it, essentially?
I love every bit of that. There was so much of that people couldn't see my face that I was like, because yes, to all of it. Just even just the reminder that there's more to us than just these physical bodies. Because the preparation can feel very much about like, are my eggs, or are my eggs as healthy as possible? Like, how's my cycle doing? Everything feels very physical. So to remember that, like, I am inviting a soul into this particular, life with me, I think is huge. And
Mhm.
remembering that there's more to us than just what we can touch and feel is
Mhm.
always something that we could do more of. Ah, yes. So, you already know I'm a huge fan. I am definitely going to be linking to everything that you have over on your channel, but what you have on your channel isn't the only thing that you do. You're a very busy lady. So, if people want to connect to all of your work, where can they do that?
Yeah, the place where I send out all my information is on my newsletter, so you can subscribe to that and you'll get everything. But I'm love your chichos on all my platforms. Thankfully, no one has the name ever, so I can claim it wherever I go. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Substack, it's all love your chichos, and I'll be there doing the most everywhere.
Very, very good. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and for being so open. I appreciate that about you.
Thank you for inviting me over to your space. I appreciate it.